So, welcome to the Sharon Fitzmaurice podcast, and today, episode 73, and my beautiful guest is Concepta McNamara. I had the pleasure of meeting Concepta in person, and we'll talk about that shortly. But Concepta is an author, speaker, and life coach who has helped countless people transform their personal and professional lives through her disarming and rigorously honest style of communicating. She was born in Ireland, but now resides in the US. We're going to talk about Concepta's book, and a most beautiful book that I have read myself. And we want to share some of Concepta's beautiful story of healing and transformation and the freedom that she has now given to herself, but she had to fight hard for. So it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce you all to Concepta. You're very welcome.
Well, thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. I'm like, I'm going to replay this just to hear that over and over.
I always say that to my guests, when we have to describe ourselves or we have to label ourselves, sometimes it's quite hard because then we're putting ourselves into a little box, it's kind of trying to explain to people who we are. But that I'm always say this, I always say this, we are so much more than those titles and labels. And in reading your book, even having met you in person, there is so much more to you and so much more even to your story. And as I read your book, and again, we'll talk about that in a moment, I actually felt like there was so much more you had to share, and hopefully you will in the coming years to come, that you'll write more and share more of your story and your own self-discovery, because that for me is the most important part of any journaling or any writing, is discovering who we are now, that we're not just because of the past. It has brought us maybe to where we are now. But let's go back a little bit for everybody that hasn't read your book, but will do when you listen to this podcast, that you will listen to Concepta's beautiful voice. And as she shares some of her story, that you'll get a feel for her. And again, as I said, meeting Concepta in person, she came to my lovely therapy room, as she shared on Facebook. And it was so lovely to work with her energy, not knowing any of her history or anything about her, but just connecting to her on that beautiful spiritual level is amazing. And then reading her story afterwards was just absolutely an honor, really. And that's all I say. When you read somebody's story and they share so much of themselves, it is an honor. It's a gift that you gifted to us, Concepta.
Thank you so much. It's interesting when you first introduced me, there was like the old part, when you grow up and I know for me, it's like if I was caught looking in the mirror, or if you say thank you with a compliment, there's always someone that wants to like put you down. But just being able to sit here comfortably and hear your kind words and let them in and be able to say thank you and not try to push them away. That's just one of the many, many parts of recovery that I've been able to do. Just allow.
Yeah. I love, and as you said that, I've shivers, and everyone that listens to my podcast knows that I get shivers in my energy quite a lot from really heartfelt and truth.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So Concepta, let's go back. So you were born in County Galway in Ireland, and you're going to share not all of your story, but snippets of your story that people can get a feel of where you came from, what you went through, and they can read all of the details in the book, but give everyone a little bit of a feeling of who Concepta was, who little Connie was.
I know. So it's interesting. I grew up probably about 25 minutes from where you reside now. And we had no clue how poor we were. We had a attached house that was built in 1840, no indoor plumbing. I shared a bed for 12 years with my parents. Sometimes my sister would be down at the other end. And I didn't know at the time how emotionally constipated it was. It was just very empty in our house, very silent. I always say you could hear the clock tick, which is one of the places I love to be today, is in silence. But for many years, it would really like bother me. I wanted someone to talk. Even when I'd be in a relationship years later, I would start an argument with the poor guy just to have connection. And I had no clue how that little snippet of growing up had such an impact. It's amazing how we carry everything with us.
Mm.
You know, I was also sexually abused at a young age, which again, I think gave me a very distorted image of how I was or who I was.
Mm.
I did go to school, obviously, but never got much, support in that because my parents never went to school. I think my mom dropped out. My dad dropped out when he was 12 or 14 because he was needed on the farm. And my mom, she, God love her, she was a preemie when she was born, no early intervention, not much education. And again, you don't even realize that you're born into this energy.
Mm.
And there is so much about energy that I've learned since. And one of the things that it's only in the last few years I was actually reminded of it. My mom's firstborn daughter died at 6 months or 5.5, 6 months old. And then it was another 3 years before she got pregnant again, and she had my sister. And then I came along. But I'd never taken into consideration what it must have been like for my mom during those first few months, wondering, am I alive? Am I still breathing? And it's like you have no clue how that energy impacts you. And that's what I call the hidden luggage that we carry with us that we're not even aware of. We know we got the luggage of being abused and neglected and abandoned. And I discovered alcohol at a young age, which really saved my life. I mean, it almost killed me in the end, but it was like a double-edged sword. It gave me confidence. I mean, I know it's liquid courage. I still remember the first time I drank, it was in Regan's pub, it's still there, but I don't think it's a pub anymore. And I remember I think it was vodka and something like vodka and lemonade or something. So it looked like lemonade. And I literally felt I could walk through the dance floor instead of around it. I remember that feeling. And I think I chased that same feeling for another 9 or 10 years, which basically brought me to my knees in so many aspects. And I was blessed at the age of 22 to get sober. I had left Ireland at 17 or 18. I came here first when I was 17, went back home, got my visa. And when I got to Logan Airport, I had a year visa. They stamped it 2 weeks at immigration. So literally 15 days later, I was now an undocumented alien. And I laughed about it, didn't care. I was invincible. And I actually didn't think I'd live past 21 anyway. I don't know where I got that idea from. I hadn't planned to kill myself or anything, but it's like I just thought life was over at that age. I think at 12, I thought if I could just get to 18 and if I could get to 20, and from 12 to 25 or 22 seems like 100 years. And now I'm thinking, can we slow the clock down? It's our perception so changes. So anyway, I did leave home with my best friend. And even though there was someone sitting next to me, my best friend really was alcohol. And I went to prove that many, many times over the years. Alcohol was more important to my mom than my brother. My brother used to be tired of seeing me in the same pub. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to go to another pub where he won't see me. It's like I defended my right to drink. And what I've then learned is that we stop growing emotionally when we're traumatized, and we stop growing emotionally when we drink, and when we stop growing emotionally, everything is stunted. So I might have been chronologically 22, but I remember thinking, how do I date? I had no clue how to be in this world not drinking. I didn't even know how to have a conversation. I used to go to AA meetings and I'd sit I'd come in late, I'd leave early. These are not recommendations if you're in the program, but I would, just in case someone would have a conversation with me. And then at the time, a lot of the meetings were an hour and a half. And I go to the bathroom during the break in case someone would say, how are you? Because I didn't know. Yet, if you saw me in the pub, I'd sit at the bar so I could just have a change of clientele throughout the night because I get bored with the same person. It's been an amazing journey.
Wow.
And I will add that I was about a year sober, and I actually didn't even think I was an alcoholic. I thought I was Irish, and this is just the way we drank. It's like, what else do you do? I had a brother who rarely drinks. And even now, I think he might have a glass of wine once a year. I used to wonder, what the hell could he be doing? out till like 2 in the morning. He's not drinking. It just never dawned on me. And now he's probably the one that I would probably, relate to the most, and it's just, again, it's shifting of our mind. I did move geographically, but it really doesn't matter where you go geographically because you bring you with you. And I found that I needed therapy. I remember thinking that I was going crazy, like absolutely crazy. And this was like a few months into being sober. And I later learned is that no, you're not crazy. You're having thoughts and feelings, and you have no clue how to freaking handle them. Not alone one at a time, but bombarded. And I literally would sleep with the TV on and the radio on and a light on. I literally could not be in the dark, and I could not like listen to my own thoughts. I was trying to drown them out. And I'm like, I think I probably need some help. And I found an amazing therapist that I spent the next 17 years working with. And I needed every single day of that to work through the abandonment stuff, to work through all the stuff I carried. There's a lot of people I could spend, 10 years blaming, and that is such a waste of energy. Instead, I've learned how to reclaim my own power, know that, there are sick people in the world. I was born into this for whatever reason. How there's people say we have a soul contract. There's times I'm thinking, what was I thinking? But today it makes perfect sense. Today, I mean, just sitting next to you, having the connection that I made with you, and all the people that I do, work with today and help. There's no way I would be able to do that had I not gone through every single aspect of what I've been through. And I did leave a lot out in the book. I could probably write 20 books. But the next one will be, more about, not about myself, my healing, but just, about helping others. How can they help themselves? Because it really is. It's, therapy once a week for 50 minutes was great. And sometimes I felt like I was holding my breath until I got there, because I felt it was the only place I was fully breathing. And I'm thinking, I got to figure out how to breathe on my own. I can't just, especially when you go on vacation for a month, I'd be like, what am I going to do with myself? So I read every self-help book. I got very smart intellectually, which is a blessing and a curse, because sometimes the intellect can actually mask the emotions. And, but it all works out. It really does. If you keep, right action produces right thinking. And as long as I don't drink, I think I have everything I need. I really do believe that inside. I still don't have the house that I want and the car that I want. I mean, I love where I am, but I'll always want more on the outside, but inside, and it really is an inside job. And I do see there are many people I know that were young, they got married, they became wives, they became moms, they became their title. And then at the age of 50, 55, 60, they're like just empty inside. I've been able to help those people too. So I feel so blessed.
Oh, Conceptor, lovely. So much in that. And I love that, you've given a little snippet of everything. And a few of the things I just want to kind of grab hold to. One of the things that, again, obviously, people that know my own story know that I obviously went through, abuse when I was younger also. And the little things that I read in your book, and again, you could go into them in detail, but one of the things that I really thought was important to share with everybody is the shame and the guilt that you carry as an abuse victim or as a survivor. And when I read your book, Concepta, as I said, and I said this to Concepta, I picked up her book and I got as far as a certain page and I had to stop because I had to absorb it all in, because part of it resonated so much with me on a personal level. But it was really listening to the words that you used and the way you felt as a child, and writing it as an adult, and especially about feeling abandoned, even within your own family. you know, that resonated with me so much. And I thought, you know, this is really powerful, and more people need to read these real, true words. And they'd say, well, why didn't you tell somebody, or why didn't you do something about it? And it is that shame and guilt. Can you explain? Because I've tried to explain it many times. Can you explain what that shame and guilt actually felt like for you growing up as a child, you know, within that family environment? And you
Yeah.
mentioned, you know, about your parents and the silence, you know, and that there was no real emotion, and how it was living with that shame and guilt as a child in that environment, even though your parents, that was their awareness and they were doing the best they could with what the
Yeah.
awareness they had. But what it was like for you as a child, as a young adult, growing up with that shame and guilt.
Well, it's interesting because I'm sure you can relate to this too. You don't even give it the name shame or guilt until like you read about it somewhere else.
Yeah.
It was the book Healing the Shame That Binds You by John Bradshaw. And I was about 6, 7 months sober then, that I was finally able to put the words with how I felt. Because I remember like going, I did this shame workshop because I knew I had shame. I did every workshop you could have. And I brought a picture of my old house, of a thatched house. Now, I've never felt ashamed of the thatched house. The neighbors didn't have thatch, but it was the same as everyone else. But I was saying, this must be what I was feeling shame about. So I went through this whole workshop, passing around my picture of the house, and obviously didn't get much from that workshop. But when I look back and I think about, because I found video footage not too long ago of me as a little kid, and I'm doing like circles outside. My uncle, one of my uncles were home from Ireland and videoing it. And we were all like playing. I was probably like 4 or 5. And I look back and I was like, I was so cute.
Yeah.
And I had like Smarties or some candy in my hand. And I'm just not sharing them with anyone. But I kept coming up to the camera and I waved. And I sobbed as I looked at her. Because again, like I said, it was the first time I'd ever seen this footage. And I loved her so much. And I just wish there would have been someone there that saw me. You know, there are people that I've worked with that were given up for adoption, that grew up in foster homes, that grew up in orphanages. I can relate to their abandonment. And that might sound crazy to some people that don't understand, but it's not being abandoned by humans. Because I tell you, in the book, I said, you know, the wall was here, my mother's arse was here, and I was in the middle. So when people say your mother and father were always around, they were always physically there, but they were emotionally unplugged. They were spiritually unplugged, very Catholic, but they were spiritually and emotionally unplugged. So I had that void with me without even realizing it. And then having been touched inappropriately had like excitement and shame to it. I loved being special, but I hated it. And it was very, very confusing. And that's why I think that the alcohol just kind of calmed everything down. But it wasn't until, like I said, I got sober that I was able to put words with it. And, you know, when people say, how come you didn't tell someone? It's not something you do. Who's the someone? No one even saw me. No one even asked me if I did my homework. Not to mention, you know, how you feeling today, or
Yeah.
going on, or you uncomfortable with any of your relatives, or, you know, it's not discussed. And then in retrospect, when I did finally share with my mom, which is in the book, you know, she flip-flopped. She felt she was supportive one day, and then she had a conversation with her sister, and I went to see her the next day, and she like literally erased any of the support she gave me. So it kind of validated. I'm glad I didn't try to tell someone, because I think it would have been more painful had I shared it with someone and they didn't believe me. So, you know, I guess I wasn't meant to.
No. It's just really powerful when you're speaking about it, you know, and seeing that footage of yourself as a 4-year-old little girl looking so cute and running around with her sweets in her hand, and looking back at yourself. Because for me, I think, and again, this is with people I work with or friends, that have gone through similar things in their lives. And it's looking back at that child and looking at her and saying, what is it she needed at the time? What did she really need? She didn't even know what she needed. But the one thing we all need is to be seen and to be heard. I always say that. But again, as you said, as a child, you don't know those words. You don't know the word shame or guilt, or I didn't even know what abuse was. There was no term for it as far as I knew. It was dirty things. That's all I knew it was.
Yeah, or down there.
Yeah, there was no words for it. So people say, and now I know there's so much more awareness out there, but I still think there's shame and guilt that goes along with it, even with the awareness we have now.
I do want to add some other part that pops into my mind. When I did start my recovery journey with my therapist, I was so disconnected from her, the little kid in me. I literally had to bring in pictures of my niece, who was like 3 at the time.
Yeah.
And I had to imagine someone doing something to her for me to try and feel that. Because I had abandoned me more than anyone ever did. I abused me, neglected me. I mean, I had great teachers, but I think no one really abandoned and abused me more than I did. And I was the one that needed to go back and reclaim her. And I've done some amazing work with therapists where we did visualizations, where I literally went back in time in my mind, picked her up from the crib.
Yeah.
I even bought a Cabbage Patch doll. It was a Cabbage Patch at the time. I think she'd be a little cuter now than a Cabbage Patch, but that's what was around at the time. And I literally would try to say, okay, what do you need? I would have conversations. I did a lot of left hand, right hand writing.
Yeah.
Asking her, like the very first time, I remember trying to connect with my little self. The adult me asked her, how are you? She basically told me to go F myself.
Yeah.
Why there now? I'm like, and it was almost like, who's this? And after a while, it's like we started to get playful because my younger me didn't trust me. I don't blame her.
Yeah.
And I had to learn, like I was probably 25 or 26 when I went on my first real date that I should have been doing at 16 or 17, normal. So I was too busy drinking.
Yeah.
So everything was I had to really learn from scratch. But there were so many different tools that worked for me. And I'm so glad that I was able to use a picture of my niece to be able to get in touch with my feelings. And it really doesn't matter whose feelings you think you're feeling, they're still releasing yours. Because that disconnect and blocking it out. And I'm sure there's things I don't remember, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think with a lot of people, whether, no matter what has happened to them through their childhood, it mightn't have been sexual abuse, but there is a disconnect. And I think a lot of people now have the awareness of that, going back and reconnecting and discovering what your little self or your child self is looking for. But some people are a little bit fearful. It's like you saying your little self told you to go F yourself, and that makes me laugh out loud, because I'm going, they may not all be sitting there crying their eyes out, our little self. They might be going saying, I'm fecking waiting for years here. What the feck are you doing?
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah, where were you?
I know, and it is lovely to be able to laugh about this, and it's necessary to be able to laugh about it. And here's the thing, when you talk about the abuse, the hardest abuse for me to be able to try and comprehend was the emotional neglect, because it's like in the atmosphere. Because my parents were not emotionally abusive in a sense. They weren't mean or loud or and even with the sexual abuse or the other kinds of abuse, there's like someone there. There's like a story. He, she, but with the emotional neglect, it's like it's the air you breathe. And it was so hard to be able to. I remember being in group therapy for like, I don't know, the first 4 or 5 months. And because group therapy was huge for me, I needed to learn how to interact with males and females. Like, not sleep with them, not really to have a really healthy relationship. And I remember being in class one night or in my therapist's office, And these two people were having what I know today was an intimate conversation. She was talking, he was listening, he would say something. And I'm sitting back like this thinking, I felt like I was watching like a movie or something on stage. It was so foreign to me. And they were feeling sorry for me. I'm like, don't feel sorry for me. I mean, I was so disconnected from people emotionally. That was the hardest thing and the most obvious. Like I feel sorry for anyone that wanted to date me back then. I was so not available. I might be able to cook for you and look good on your arm and maybe watch a movie with you. But if you're expecting, of course, I would attract the most constipated, emotional men as well. So, and then try to fix them and change them.
Yeah.
Realize, oh, okay, this ain't working. We do. A lot of our unmet stuff does come out in relationships, and that's the good news and the bad news.
I love that. One of the things you said there was so funny. You know, as I said, things will kind of just click with me as you're talking. And one of the things was that you weren't emotionally able to connect with people. And through my own healing journey, one of the things, and even now to this day, I am over emotionally connecting with people. I get so involved in their stories and listening to them. And I share so openly now with everybody. And sometimes I think, do you have to say so much? Do you have to ask them those questions about themselves? You know, but it's just who I am. It's that part of being heard or allowing myself to truly listen to somebody and not run away from the hard stuff.
To me, it's
You know,
fully breathing.
yeah.
Walk and we're only as sick as our secrets. We're only as sick as our sickest secret.
I wrote that down today.
I
There was a
love
few
that.
things from the book, and I wrote that down here. We are only as sick as our secrets because it was in your book. And another thing I wrote down was comfortable enough being
Being
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. Yeah, I
They really
remember,
stood out to me.
and it's they're both so true. I do remember hearing that. I don't even know if I was at a meeting or something. You're only as sick as your secrets. I remember sitting back thinking, oh shit, I'm sick.
Yeah.
And really thought that I was going to take a lot of my secrets to the grave because I didn't want to hurt anyone, didn't want, and through therapy, I was able to unload it. Again, the other thing that I think I'm most proud of is that I did not have to go back and tell my parents how emotionally constipated you were or how you didn't know. I really believe in not hurting others,
Yeah.
as part of my healing. And it is one of the steps in AA also about making amends, except when to do so would hurt them or others.
Yeah.
And it's a great rule to live by. And there is nothing like one of the best things. My dad was, I love him to pieces. He was, as I said, emotionally constipated, but I also was able to like share so much with him over the years. And he would just sit there with his elbow. Well, I never knew that. I wish you're as well off without, he would say these one-liners that were so beautiful. And I felt very, very connected to him, and I think it's a direct result of having a male therapist and working through a lot of my stuff with the male therapist. I was able to really be able to have good relationships with males. And actually most of my friends are male today.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
it's a blessing, really.
So when I read your book, and again, Conceptor's book is Freedom, Saoirse in Irish. And I'll just read out the little bit that's at the back that I've written down. Tracing a young girl's experience growing up in Ireland in abject poverty, her move to America, her journey through intensive therapy, self-discovery, forgiveness, and ultimately finding freedom she fought so hard for. And it was a true account of abuse, addiction, and victory. And lots of things stood out, as I said in the book, and everyone will just have to read it because it is so beautifully written. And one of the things when I finished the book, I sat there as I do with all books, and I think, what has this given to me? What have I taken from it? And if I had to share again, it was like, for me, what I felt a lot of it was about was relationship. It was relationship that you didn't have and that you developed over the course of time, and the relationship with your parents, even as they were both transitioning, and that beautiful time that you could spend with each of them. The relationship, most importantly, the relationship with yourself, Concepta, that you actually grew to be who you are now, that you grew in the way that you wanted to grow, you know, with everything that had happened, and that you tried to grow the relationship with your parents as they were, as you said, without changing them. You could only change yourself, but that you brought this new forgiving and compassionate part of yourself into their lives, and you took them for who they were, even especially through that time when they were transitioning from this world to the next. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I just thought, you know what, it is about part of our relationships with every other person that is important to us or that we connect to, you know, on a deeper level, that it does have a part to play in our lives, doesn't it? Even now, even if you're aware and you've done all your journeying and you've done all your self discovery, I think we're always discovering ourselves through our relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we attract people that trigger our stuff.
Yes.
And I do believe a lot of it, like when two people get together, I'm working with a couple now that are very, very new, and they're only like 2 or 3 months together. I'm thinking they should still be doing the honeymoon stage. But clearly there's a lot more going on. And I think their connection is pretty strong, which is also awakening their unhealed stuff. Not sure if they belong together or not, but it really depends on whether or not when two people get together and they realize that they have stuff. We all do. You know, I talk about hidden luggage. I'm actually writing about it in the next. We all have like the external luggage, but the hidden luggage is the stuff you need to look out for. And being able to know what your needs are, teach the partner know what his or her needs are, and teach their partner. And be able to not have to read someone's mind. Like I used to have to read my dad's mind,
Yeah.
you know, and I got good at it. But I remember, like any guy I've ever met, I'm not reading your mind. Tell me what you want to eat. Tell me what, you know, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And for a while, it's great when I wanted to be like in control. But then when I actually wanted a partner, it's like, no, I want you to decide where to go. What, you know, so I was flip-flopping, or it looked like, as I was growing and evolving.
Yeah.
And yeah, my website, by the way, is concepta.life. If you want to take a look and see
Yes.
just how I've been able to, you know, apply a lot of what I'm talking about and being able to help other people. And it is, the relationship is truly with ourselves. If you don't have a real relationship with yourself, you cannot give anything to your partner. And never, ever, ever love your partner more than yourself. Always love yourself a little more.
Yeah, I love that. And even in our, not, I suppose, well, our intimate relationships, our friendships as well. But I find that as well, sometimes, you know, that, and again, it's not because I've done this work, but I hear people saying to me, even my clients, and they're saying, well, I'm so open, you know, and I want to share what's been going on in my life and, you know, what I'm doing and what's working for me and what it's bringing up. And they're saying a lot of their friends are kind of going, all right, yeah. They're, you know, there's no, that's what I said. When I'm with my friends, it's a very deep and emotional conversation, and we chat about everything, you know, in a few hours, and we can't get enough of the conversation. And it's a very deep, and you forget there's anybody else in the room, you know, whether we're at a restaurant or we're in their house. But I hear from a lot of people that they can't find that connection, even with friendships, you know, that there's nobody that wants to go there. It's like some people are a little bit afraid of that intimacy of sharing. Have you found that concept as you were going through your own journey?
Not so much so in the US. But when you talk about it, I just think of some of the people I still know in Ireland, and my sister and her buddies. Yeah, I don't think they may or may not sit around, but I call it like surface bullshit.
Yeah.
And I have no time for that, but I don't gravitate towards that either. And now with like the politics being in the way it is, I find it even more challenging to find people that do want to go deeper than that. But with my work, I get the opportunity I'm also a Reiki practitioner, so I get to journey with people. I get to, like, my needs are met really at work. And had I not been in this work, I probably would be beset with the same challenges. Luckily, my partner is fascinated with my life and how I'm doing things. And his term, I think, is that he always said, you have such a great way of disarming people. And it really is about making people feel safe and taking off the mask. And I do think in time, we gravitate towards people like that. But I'm sure there's groups and different type of, to even, because I'm always learning, always. I'm always taking different workshops, different, events. And I bet at events like that or workshops, people will be able to gravitate towards their own tribe, as I call it.
Yeah. And talking about groups, that brings me to another part. So we'll talk about Mark. Is it Fanger or Fanger? How do you pronounce it?
Fanger.
Fanger. There's the Irish Fanger.
Dr. Mark Fanger. Yeah.
Fanger. So he was your therapist for all of those number of years. And again, a male therapist and somebody that taught you could breathe and open up and share. And again, this was a really powerful part in your book because again, for maybe the first time, here was somebody that was going to help you and that you could open up and share and show your dark secrets and the shameful secrets and all of those things and work with your child self. But what really struck me in the book as well, and you've written about all of this, is that, and we were talking about it, earlier, is you relied on him quite a lot and you didn't like him being gone when he was gone on holidays. And how could you, and this brings me back to the relationship side of things, that sometimes we depend on certain people and there might be only a handful of people. And I know with lots of friends, they will say there's certain people and it's only usually a handful of people that they can really open up to and share and speak to. And when they're not there and they're not available, it's like you can't breathe, that's the way it was in your book. But the funniest part was, maybe it wasn't funny, but it was funny for me. It was that you were going to individual therapy and then he suggested you go to group therapy and you did not want to go to group therapy.
No, I actually thought he was throwing me. I thought he was tired of dealing with me on my own. And that he just wanted to throw me in with a pack of wolves, which honestly, it felt like that at times because it was not one of those, though, how you doing, how you feeling? It was everyone was bringing in their unhealed shit. So sometimes I was someone's brother, sometimes I was someone's sister. Like one woman said to me, I finally know my work with you is to deal with about my selfish mother. And I'm like, well, go deal with that in your own time. I'm not going to be yourself. But it really is. It's almost like reacting all of that out. The part where, and I'll just go back for a sec, the part about depending. First of all, I had no clue how to depend. Even as a young kid, I remember I broke my hand at one point, cut my knee another time. And my mother found me we used to have the tea chest and we'd have the clothes on the ground in front of it because the tea chest did too much. And I remember literally curled up in a ball with my arm and like this. And I'm thinking, most kids know to run to their mom when they're hurt. It was just but that was something I didn't even know I didn't have. My therapist had me watch the movie, My Left Foot. And I don't know if you've ever seen that or not.
Yes.
But I was watching it and thinking, yeah, that's a freaking movie. There's no Irish mammies that are that plugged in and that kid. And I was like, that is such a rubbish. And I was so I was trying to teach him, this does not exist. This is a movie. But I understand, a couple of years later, I was understanding he was trying to teach me what I missed. And part of my process with him was to learn to depend. He almost created that dependency. And I hated it to depend on anyone, because what if they're not there? They're going to disappoint me. They're, and also the transference, there was one time he had said to me, he goes, I just want you to know, just because I'm male and knowing some of the work you need to do, you're probably going to get triggered. If you would like to do this work with a female, I can recommend someone. And again, I thought he was like, what, you're getting rid of me? I'm like, no, you're stuck with me, like it or not. And of course, then there were times I wanted him to see me the way my uncle did. I wanted him to find me attractive. And I remember he said to me, that will never happen. And I was like, huh. But I'll tell you, the relief that I felt. He sat over in his chair, I sat in his chair. We literally shook hands the very first time we met, and we shook hands the last time we met. And that was the only contact I'd ever had with him. And yet, I felt so, I used to think, you really don't know me unless you sleep with me. You're never going to know me the way. And he's like, well, that's never going to happen. And it was like, he didn't always verbalize that, and I didn't always say that, but it's all of that transference that happened. And it saddens me. And I've actually worked with a girl who seduced like 2 of her therapists. And it is like the most painful stories I've ever heard. You've got this person. So Mark was everything to me. Like Mark became my mother, my father, my brother, my sister. Half the time I told him I didn't give a shit about him. And, you know, he used to tell me it's such an ego. He thinks he knows everything. And then I'd go back next week. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. He held space. And that is one of the many things I've learned from him. Like he taught me boundaries and he taught me how to hold space. And that is what I do today for people, is just hold space, allow them to feel uncomfortable, allow them to feel comfortable enough being uncomfortable, allowing them to be vulnerable, say what they want, hold back what they want, you know, and that was the freedom he gave me. He said, I don't care if you come in here one week and lie to me, and you come in the next week and you tell me you did. It's like he just gave me freedom to be me. And, you know, in time, I was able to integrate the different parts of me. Because I remember one time like making him a wreath, and it was like around Christmas time, and I had like teddy bears on the wreath and eucalyptus. It was really pretty. Well, he freaking analyzed that thing from like the whole thing. And, you know, I'm like, can't you just take a freaking gift? And it was one of the first times I was going home to Ireland. And really what that whole thing was about for us after he realized it, I honestly thought I was just giving him a gift. But underneath it, I was leaving a part of me with him so I could stay safe, because I knew I was going back to the den, kind of back to the lion's den, to Ireland. And those teddy bears represented me. And beautiful. Yeah. So I was thinking, that was smart on my part. Like our unconscious.
Yes.
Our unconscious never, ever rests. That's why it's really important before you go to bed at night, do not be watching the news. Do not be listening to some crime show, which I'm guilty of at times. But then I'll put some music on when I'm actually lying in bed, or put some sound healing or something. But our subconscious, and the other thing to listen to is your gut, not your hormones. Because of like, you know, if you're in a relationship with someone, like the sex is great, the chemistry, the energy, he's not there, but it, you know, so your gut, not your hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so funny, Concepta. I love it. I love, you know, that we can laugh even with the serious issues, and you said that a while ago, because that has helped me tremendously to laugh at myself and not take myself so seriously, because for years it was a very serious business. It was a very hard business, and it was trying to survive behind the hidden dark secrets of shame and guilt. And now I love having just everything out in the open and saying it out as it is. And some of the stuff, you know, that I'm kind of experiencing at the moment is not to do with me, but it's bringing up some stuff for me, which again, I'm learning from. And it's like, what do I need for myself in the midst of this, in helping somebody else? And especially when it's somebody in your family. So your book was just so beautiful in the fact that you spoke about all of those relationships. And again, as I said, after reading it, there was so much I took from it, but that was one of the things I took, was about the relationships. But another part, just that you mentioned there as well, and it's feeling desire translated to love for me. And that was, even as you were talking about your therapist, that if people didn't desire you or they didn't find you attractive,
Yeah,
they didn't,
sexual desire.
yeah,
Yeah.
that they didn't like or love you. And I think that's a very important one for any male or female that have been abused in the
Mhm.
past, and that it's not the same, sexual desire is not the same as somebody actually liking you or loving you or respecting you.
But if you have not done your work, it can feel the same.
Yeah.
And that can be very, very confusing because there are people who literally have no memories of their childhood at all until they're older and get involved with someone. And then they will judge, because again, at a very young age, what I was taught or shown is that, love equals sexual touch. And I even said in the book, had I not been sexually abused, there'd really be no affection at all. I remember getting a hug from my dad before I was going into the hospital one time to get my tonsils out. That was like the first time I ever got a hug from that guy. And it's not that he didn't love us, he was just a product of his own environment. But it really is so confusing to have body memories, have then mental memories. And if you're not connected to yourself, I mean, some of my relationships were like train wrecks, obsession, and I used to think obsession was love. I used to think if you want to know where I am, what I'm doing, oh my God, he loves me. Like, no, he's a freaking stalker. And I've had so many different experiences with different men, and every single one of them was to help me get in touch with my pain. And I literally was on my knees bawling one time after this crazy nut, I didn't want to see him or it wasn't working anymore. It just, when it stops working, when two souls are compelled to be together, it can be amazing and it can be out of this world. But if one of those souls has learned their lesson and it's time for them to move on, watch out, because it can become, and I think that's, people can be, can kill one another over that.
Yes, absolutely.
I went on a date about 5 years ago with a guy that was so intense. But he's very funny. He was a surgeon, and he said, we're like, how was your day? And he goes, oh, I took I took cancer out of 2 prostates. He goes, how was yours? I said, I was pushing around muscle, being a massage therapist. We literally closed the restaurant. We were there for like 3 or 4 hours. But I had decided the night before, after I'd learned that he was not divorced, he said his papers didn't go through. And I'd already been with 2 men where I felt I was like a transition woman for them. So I had a little bit of resentment from that. So I had made a decision. If you're not fully divorced and alone, I don't care what you look like. And this guy he looked like Lou Ferrigno, tall, handsome, very funny, successful, everything you would think you want. But I had made that conscious decision inside. And I actually said to him about 15 minutes in, I said, by the way, I'm not interested in dating you. And he's, kind of taken aback because, I kind of touched his a little bit. And I said, well, you're not divorced and I really don't want to blah, 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 and I had too much therapy under my belt. Then he opened up and started telling me about how crazy he was. He had a wife, one in another country. He had a wife here. And then he was also reeling up a 17-month relationship with someone he was obsessed with. And I guess he was looking for someone else before, they were gone. Fast. And we stayed friends for about a year because I'm like, I can, we became really, really cool friends. We went to dinner periodically. He'd vent about his women or whatever. And it was great. I love the male energy. Fast forward 2 years ago, he actually killed the woman he married.
Oh my God.
Down the street from where I live. Now, at the time, like I said, he was very intense. It wasn't like an evil energy that I felt at the time. It was very tense. He was the hero and his castle. And I remember asking him about his relationship with his mother. And I was like, oh, okay. that makes sense.
Mm,
You know,
wow.
and it all goes back to your childhood. And I just feel so blessed that it was a decision I made that night. I listened to my gut. His partner had actually reached out to me because she was reading some of his text and wanted to meet. And I was like, this is a little odd. And then,
Mm,
sometimes I look back and I'm thinking, I wonder if I did reach out, would I have been? And I can't do that.
no, you can't.
Everyone
No.
has their own journey. Everyone has their own path. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Your unhealed crap, and it doesn't matter. This guy had a $2 million home, a Mercedes, a successful business. His picture was on a freaking billboard in Boston. It was, but it didn't matter because he did not have himself.
No.
And
And
I was,
how you were so aware, though, Concept, as I said, that lady maybe that, unfortunately, ended up with him and then it ended her life. He ended her life.
yeah,
Maybe she hadn't made that conscious decision like you had, but you had come through all of that healing and, were consciously aware of, no, I am not going down
yeah,
this road again. But happily, you're with a beautiful man now
I
called
am.
Steve.
Yes. He's the one that actually brought this book alive. Like I always describe, because I remember when we first met and I was telling him, yeah, I'm going to write a book, and he was like all happy, thinking I had already the editors and everything in place. I literally handed him, I think I even described it the way he said it. I handed him what I described the back of a tapestry,
Yeah.
like a pure mess. And God love him. He was like so, first of all, it was like his downtime from his
Mm.
crazy work because his work was very mental. And the funny thing, one time I remember he was like working on my book all weekend. I'm sitting on the freaking couch, right? And he's over there and he's getting like all connected and closer to me and learning about me. And like he's got this and I'm sitting over here. I'm like, and he's thinking and feeling, he's like, I went, no, you're connected to my book.
Yeah.
No, I'm over here on the couch. I mean, it's so fun. We have a great relationship. We have a great sense of humor. He's never met anyone like me, which I guess is the good news and the bad news. Being so direct, being so honest, knowing what I like, knowing what I don't like. And it's like, it's only, I think it took 2 years for him to tell me what he wanted for breakfast.
Nah.
You want oatmeal or poached eggs? Be like, whatever you want to make. I'm like, no, I want you to tell me what you want. And sometimes I love that he's so easygoing. I
Yeah.
love it. But when I want him not to be, then and again, it's all my stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
I want what,
Yeah.
it,
I love that you have found somebody that sees you, and that respects you and honors your journey and your work. And, in Steve helping you put this beautiful book together and getting your story out there. It's just so powerful. So again, we all know people come along at the right moment, at the right time in your life, the right person to help you to help you heal or
yeah.
to teach you some lesson that you have not been looking after yourself. So your book, again, Freedom, and we can find it through Concepta's website, www.concepta.life, and all the links are there. Check out her website.
Amazon will
Amazon, yeah.
put in my
So
name.
I'll put up some more links on the show notes as well. But Concepta, I could talk to you all day, but I want
I
to thank
know.
you so much for this lovely connection again today. And as I said, from that first moment I met you, didn't know anything about you, but your beautiful energy, I connected to it. It's so warm, your beautiful glow in your energy. And I know that you're helping so many people now through having done so much work on yourself and, that forgiveness and compassion, not just of others, but of yourself as well. Because, somebody said to me, are you just kind of so fed up that you wasted so much time, Sharon? And I said, no, it just got me to
Not a
where I
waste
needed
of
to
time.
get to.
And I'll tell you, forgiveness, an awful lot of people have a very, I think, an incorrect understanding of that. Forgiveness is the greatest gift I've ever given myself. I
Yeah.
have forgiven people that don't even know I forgive them.
Yeah, it's not about them.
Not about them. It's about making a decision. I am no longer going to carry this hurt or pain. I'm going to reclaim it and I forgive them
Yeah.
because
And that for me,
clearly they
yeah.
were souls too. So
Yeah.
hurt people hurt others.
And that's a lovely thing, just as we'll finish this off, is that we are all souls and we are this beautiful spark of light from the divine universe, each and every one of us. But through our choices, through our upbringing, through what we've seen and heard and learned and be programmed with and experienced, it affects then our choices and decisions for ourselves until we know different.
Yeah.
And that's what I said. So everybody out there, look at them with that little spark of compassion, that they are underneath everything, even the worst people in the world, that they are still to a light of the universe. Something happened in their life to create this person that maybe you see as undesirable or evil or whatever the word is. But we're looking at ourselves when we're looking at everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's when I see you even across from me, all those miles, sitting here on Zoom, Concepta. I honor the light in you.
I honor the light in you.
Thank you, Concepta.
You're so welcome. I will reach out the next time I'm in Ireland and we'll go have lunch.
We sure will, and I look forward to it. So thank you to Conceptor McNamara. As I said, please check out her website, and I will be putting the links for her books in the show notes also. And check out her website. And if you wish to contact her, maybe what we've spoken about briefly, and everything is briefly in this because you'll have to read her beautiful book and her story to find out a little bit more. Check out her website. And if anything has resonated with you and you wish to contact either myself or Concepta, please do. Or if you have been affected by anything that we have spoken about, please contact a local support group or a local counselor in your area or your local rape crisis center, where you will be listened to and you will be treated in confidentiality and with respect. So thank you so much to everyone for listening again, and to my lovely guest, Concepta. I look forward to connecting to you all again soon.
Thank you so much.